Hello everybody and welcome. Hello tiny succulent. Hi Yoli. Hi Frenchie. Alright, we're just waiting for Kin Folkz to arrive. And we'll get started. I'm here right now at KXSF Studios in San Francisco. This is just a small community radio station that I work for. Has a long history. Hola! Hi Frenchie. Long history here in San Francisco. It used to be KUSF, but now it's just independent radio here. Alright, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. I see Kin Folkz is joining us here, so let's see. Alright. Alright. And
Hey.
hi Kin Folkz.
Hey, Nick.
Hey, could
Did
you
you grab something to eat before we jumped on?
I didn't. I had a really big lunch, you know.
Oh, okay.
So I did grab some coffee though, so I'm ready.
All right. I'm ready too. I grabbed the snack.
All right. What do you?
Water. I'm ready to get into this convo. Thank you so much for inviting me on, honey.
Yeah, of course. I'm really excited to have you. There's so much that I could say about you and the work that you do for our community. But I thought maybe it's a good opportunity for you to introduce yourself and tell your story. Could we start maybe just with a little bit of information about yourself, tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and some of the work you do for the Queer Arts Center in Oakland and beyond.
Okay. I appreciate you so much. I always have to start off with our ancestors. Before I utter a word, I have to give thanks for the people who came before me and really imprinted all of the necessary messaging through their experiences, their life experiences, into my DNA. I come from a family of activists. So growing up, it's not like I had a choice. I was really clear that I had to be an angelic hellraiser too. So my mother grew up in Jackson, Mississippi, actually outside of Jackson, Mississippi, and helped to desegregate lunch counters there. She grew up around the corner from Medgar Evers. She's Black and Choctaw Indian. And so, you look at all of these cultural perspectives that come in that one body, the Trail of Tears and the human trafficking of Africans in this country. So my mother is the consummate, angelic hellraiser. And then you have my father, who is not from this country, who grew up in Jamaica and comes from, the West African tribe of those folks who were captured in the push to build this economy for this society. I use that term loosely, society, to mostly from the Bambara and the Fulani tribe. And I thank my sister Beatrice for doing the research to make sure that we can name where we've come from in Africa, which is a very important thing to be able to do. Not all of us who are of African descent living here, who are descendants of human trafficked Africans, have the ability to say that. So I want to give honor to my father, who is a Garveyite, who taught us the teachings of Marcus Garvey, and my mother, who taught us the teachings of, being someone growing up in the South in the 50s. So I want to first honor them and our lineage all the way back. I want to honor the land that I'm sitting on. I'm here in Oakland, and the Ohlone made this the kind of beautiful, loving space that people want to be a part of. And at the same time, it's important to note that our stewardship has been absolutely atrocious since, and that we need to give the land back to the rightful stewards. There are several shell mounds here still trying to protect us and help us maintain our sensibility in Oakland. And it's one of the reasons why I think Oakland remains somewhat woke in comparison to some other places. So I want to give honor to the Ohlone. I want to, just be clear about the fact that we are on Huichin land, Huichin territory. And the work that I've done, like I said, ever since I was a kid, I remember my dad talking about abolitionist work at Attica, back in New York. I remember my mother having conversations about us traveling back down to the South, which was a regular experience for us. and how all along the way there were various people who had been doing this kind of activism work. So it's part of our blood. You know, in our house, my parents would have meetings and people would come in and strategize. So I can't say that it's something that I chose to do. I have to say that it chose me, you know, in my bloodline.
Yeah.
And I'm blessed to be born in this body. I'm blessed to be born in this body and to have the sensibility that comes with this body and to have the ingenuity that comes with this body and to have the wisdom that comes with this body. I am autistic. I had huge developmental delays. I didn't start speaking until I was almost 5 years old and walking until I was almost 4. So much of my experience since my childhood has been filtered through those two realities, you know, being someone in a body that is on the spectrum and a mind that is on the spectrum. So the activism work started in my youth. It started with things like working actively with elders in our community and making sure that our elders were linked into the youngins. And I was one of those youngins. So we had an ongoing relationship where, you know, 25 of us would converge on these elder care facilities and adopt grandparents, because it was really about not just us giving to them, it was so much more that they gave to us. So I have to give honor to our elders who helped me grow up in the world, to really grow up into the world. And so when I went off to Wellesley College, I knew that this hell raising had to continue for as long as I breathed. And I was blessed to find out from one of my beloveds, Kenneth Smith, that Alice Walker was here in the Bay Area and that Angela Davis was teaching at SFSU. So as soon as I finished my undergraduate degree at Wellesley in Black Studies with an emphasis on Caribbean Studies and a major also, I double majored and minored. I majored in psychology and I minored in theater. I came straight out here and jumped into the ethnic studies program. And I was educated by Phil McGee, Wade Nobles, Opa Tashaka, Laura Head, and of course, Angela Davis. And they're just some magnificent people who helped me understand how to grow up and evolve as an activist in my way, because there isn't just one way. There are multiple ways for us to heal and to evolve together. And then it's important to have a group of mentors who can help guide your individual understanding. And they told me that the arts would always be a part of my tool in the world for revolution. So I started Spectrum Queer Media after I was out in the world doing a lot of other things. I was a researcher, did my doctoral studies at Stanford University. And the more time that I spent looking at motivational theory, the more time I was convinced that I needed to be more active. So I stepped away from the research and spent more time being in community. And that started when I was about 24, 25 years old. So we started Spectrum Queer Media, which was an organization to really support marginalized Black and brown, queer and trans folks who are creatives, but also activists. Because a lot of us who are artists, I call us artivists, a lot of the work that we're doing is political in nature. And I felt that we needed to have a safe space to be able to gather and make sure that our messaging is seen. So we created this platform called Spectrum Queer Media. And the beginning of this year, just a few weeks before Shelter in Place happened, we opened up the East Bay Queer Healing Arts Center, because it's the first time we've had our own brick and mortar. We were excited about being able to have workshops there, to open up the space for the community. And within weeks, we were told that we had to close our doors. So we continue to do the work as we've been doing it for over 15 years, and that's remotely. My apologies. Defund OPD. Defund OPD.
That's the call, right?
That's the call. They just wanted to remind me, defund OPD, so we could put money into, you know, the kind of actions that build community and actually deter crime. But anyway, yeah, so the Queer Healing Arts Center here in Oakland, located on Lake Shore, which was a blessing because that has a lot of history. The Black Wall Street, actually here in Oakland, was partially there for a long time. We're in a space that used to be a pharmacy, you know, like over 90 years ago. So there's just a lot of good healing energy in this space, and we're just keeping it going remotely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Kin Folkz, for sharing your story, recognition of, you know, the land and your ancestors, as well as your family. Such a wonderful union, and I love that term that you use. Was it angelic hellraiser?
Yes, that's from Bayard Rustin, actually.
Okay, thank you.
He encouraged us all to be angelic hellraisers.
Yes. I wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, art in action, because that's something that you mentioned in your kind of creation of Spectrum Queer Media and the mission behind that. So I feel many folks have used art as a way of giving voice to marginalized people, as you said, or bringing light to marginalized struggles.
Yes.
But what does art in action mean to you? How could we move beyond art as purely cultural or intellectual to being truly politically transformative in our struggle to realize real systemic change?
Well, public art takes two forms, right? There's the state-sanctioned public art, and then there's the art of the people. And I can only really speak from my perspective as a Black-bodied person, and I can tell you that for 450 years, we have not been heard. The fact that a pandemic is offering us an opportunity to be heard, to truly be heard, says a lot about the level of cognitive dissonance in this country around Black people, not just standing up for ourselves, but for everyone. Because anytime that any sort of evolution takes place for our species at the voice of and the leadership of Black folks, it benefits everyone. Like, that's been proven. Several of our greatest human movements in this country definitely have come from the Black power struggles. And so when we look at public art, it's really important for us to distinguish art that is there for people to muse, right? To be amused by and to dabble in conversation. And then there's art that actually wants you to move beyond the conversation and into action. And so this sort of emphatic messaging that comes along with art in action, and that's why we decided to start calling this art in action, not just public art, is that it's coming from the lineage of being able to use walls as your political platform. When you're not being heard at City Hall, when you don't have representatives who actually care about your wellness, you have to find a way, if you are thinking, breathing, thoughtful human wanting to have some sense of agency, which I believe is the majority of us, even those of us who are on the spectrum. You know, folks like to believe that we don't understand what's happening. We feel it. We deserve to be heard. So art in action gives us an opportunity to pair what people typically think of as public art with real action items. So you'll find that with every art in action that comes out of the Queer Healing Arts Center, there's an opportunity for people to start looking at a contract of conduct. Like, how do we move into this new normal that the pandemic has helped to usher in, and come through it with practices that will make us better than we were before, healthier than we were before, you know? The way to transform that largely is in the hands of the people who are most affected by the abuse. So when we say art in action, we're really being clear with folks that we're not asking you to go outside of the affected, marginalized community and seek artists who can just recreate some of our messaging. You know, it's just like if something's being cooked in a kitchen where there's been love, there's been understanding, there have been tears laid into it, you can't then take that recipe and give it to someone else and expect that it has the same energy. So we're really asking people to be much more considerate about seeing the art that expresses things like Black Lives Matter as an opportunity to protect property, right? Or an opportunity to be, to somehow demonstrate allyship. We would much rather that people show up at City Hall, that people, you know, make sure that policies, that bills, that initiatives that are going to lead to housing for Black mothers, that's going to lead to shelter for Black trans children and youth and young adults. You know, we want to see that those things are happening. So if you're paying the superficial skin surface, you know, energy to the art and action movement, then you've missed it altogether.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think it's a good reminder, you know, and I feel you're kind of touching upon this idea already that I do want to expand upon soon, is that this difference between performative allyship and real, authentic, genuine allyship that is what you call, and you've said before, the allyship rite of passage, and as it applies, and I love that phrase.
Yes.
Um, as it applies to art, you know, not co-opting or outsourcing art that deals with, you know, Black struggles and Black pain and Black voices and demands from the Black community.
Right.
Getting that recipe, and I also love that metaphor of the cooking in the kitchen. So I do want to, before we get to that, I do want to talk a little bit about recent art and action that you led the charge on. You, along with, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of the names of the artists here, but Gorilla Harris from We Are the Ones.
Gorilla Davis. My apologies. Gorilla Davis. I think it said Harris in there, but it's Gorilla Davis.
Gorilla Davis, sorry, typo there, but Gorilla Davis from We Are the Ones, Janetta Johnson, who we had on a few weeks ago from the Transgender Variant Intersex Justice Project, as well as, was it 12 or 13 other wonderful artists and over 250 community members. Could you tell us a little bit about what led to the creation of this mural, its language and its placement, but, you know, also kind of expanding upon, you know, what is that, what in this art and action, what were your contract or code of conduct that you were calling for?
Thank you. So the mural, which now we've understood is the longest mural, street mural in Oakland, was the second art in action, actually. We've had three major ones. The first one was the Black Trans Lives Matter Caravan, and we had over 3,000 people come in cars because we wanted to think about, we wanted to maintain the truth around who is most disproportionately affected by COVID-19. And we definitely wanted to protect the Black and Brown community members who fall into those categories. So we decided the first action should actually be accessible. So we made sure that people could access it if they had the devices to be able to jump online. We had a captioner, we had ASL interpreters. We made certain that we had some physicians from Highland available to, you know, just help with PPE, make sure the folks had everything to stay as healthy as possible. And then we commenced for 5 hours with a combination of art, an opportunity for people to jump on the mic and share information, dance. There was a lot of art making. So people were transforming their cars into these public statements to protect Black lives. And that happened primarily because we were seeing what we've seen over and over again, which is that the media creates a hierarchy of importance when it comes to Black lives. And we were finding that Black, trans, and GNC lives were not only being ignored, but in many instances were being devalued by being misgendered. And we wanted to be clear that this was an honoring of the lives that were taken, as well as an honoring of the lives that are still here. So we wanted to be as loud and ruckus as possible, which it was. And it also had a statement. So people had a chance to read the statement and sign into the statement. The statement was then carried over to the mural. And it really just asks people to move beyond the mural and to start engaging in 10 basic practices in their lives. And so I'm going to see if I can quickly pull that up for you. Anyone who wants to look for this, it is on the queerartcenter.com website. And also we live stream the entire caravan so people can take a look at what happened if you missed that at the beginning of June. So here they are. Number one, prioritize. I'll read a little bit more. We are unapologetically Black in our positioning. In affirming that Black Lives Matter, we not only qualify our position. I'm sorry. In affirming that Black Lives Matter, we need not qualify our position. To love and desire freedom and justice for ourselves is a prerequisite for wanting the same for others. We affirm the lives of Black queer and trans folks, disabled folks, undocumented folks, folks with records, women of all genders, and all Black lives along the gender spectrum. And I would also want to add in neurodiverse beings like myself. Our network centers those who have been marginalized within Black liberation movements, and that's directly from BLM. So we continued with that thought by saying that we ask that all of the undersigned agree to elevate and value the lives of all Black people, including Black trans women, Black femmes of all genders, Black gender nonconforming folks, Black queer folks, Black disabled folks, Black undocumented folks, and Black previously incarcerated and currently imprisoned folks, and Black folks that sit on the neural spectrum like myself. We asked for the shifting of ideology and actions and encouraged all to use their privilege as opportunities to promote legislation and practices that, one, prioritize our leadership and compensate us, two, recognize our names and our genders, three, take accountability and press for justice for our lives, four, honor our legacies, five, shelter us, six, redistribute. This is really important. A lot of people, they love the first five and then they get caught on the sixth. Redistribute police funds to fund our grassroots organizations and our communities. Mm-hmm. Number seven is another one. End solitary confinement and abolish the prison industrial complex. End the criminalization of Black self-defense. Educate and maintain the practice of upending misogyny, transphobia, and classism as it targets Black people and all beings. So that's what we ask people for, and that's also adapted from TGIJP and from the Transgender Law Center. This is the moment for action. So when people are creating murals and folks are walking by and saying, oh, that's so beautiful, we want folks to dig deeper, you know? So there's a hashtag associated with it. There's a, you know, an IG associated with it. There's a website associated with it. There's energy that can give you opportunity beyond just the visual, beyond just the performative, if you're interested in authentic allyship. So that's the mural in a nutshell. And I think you had a visual earlier on of the mural. Anyone who's interested, it's the Oakland, Lake Merritt, All Black Lives Matter mural. And, yeah. And the third action was the raising of a flag, the All Black Lives Matter flag, in place of the US flag atop the Tribune, the Oakland Tribune building. So that happened on Interdependence Day. Interdependence Day was the name chosen by Gorilla Davis. So big up to Gorilla. And we got out there and we celebrated our interdependence rather than our independence.
Wow. Yeah, so a lot to unpack there. I wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, what you mentioned there in one of the bands, that shift in ideologies and practices. Before we get to that, though, I wanted to, there's, you know, in a statement that you posted on social media, you said, you know, kind of summing up what you were talking about, that this work of art, this mural, is an entry point in this transformative work, both, you know, internally and externally in our practices. What you said is, it's not merely a work of art. As beautiful as it is a work of life. We are fighting for our lives. Could you tell us a little bit about what the term media erased means, and tell us about the importance of recognition, of acknowledgement in that kind of, you know, the violent irony of erasing the Black work of the artists, the work of Black artists, while attempting to shed light on their work and struggle.
Exactly. Thank you again for the opportunity to just be in this space and have the conversation, because typically the people who are creating the art aren't the people who are invited into the conversation. And the people who are recreating the art or who are benefiting somehow as a performative ally typically are the folks who are invited into the space. So thank you for inviting me into the space so that we can have this conversation. Rite of passage is an important part of anyone's development. That's a given, right? And we know that during rite of passage, you have an opportunity to gain information and skills that will help you become part of the collective, so that you understand your individual responsibility and accountability to the collective. When you start looking at authentic allyship, a large portion of that allyship and what people perceive as allyship, because as I said, the people who are creating the call to action aren't necessarily the ones who get the mic. These folks are hearing about allyship almost like a strange game of telephone, where by the time that it gets to them, it no longer has the meaning and the sincerity that it used to have. So a lot of people inadvertently think that their allyship means showing up at a rally, having a Black Lives Matter, t-shirt on or sign, and that is the rite of passage. That's not the rite of passage. For allyship, the rite of passage is about the work. It's about the practice. It's about finding a group of mentors. Every rite of passage has mentorship, people who guide you through, the questions, the challenges. And so we're blessed that in Oakland, we have, in the Bay Area, we have groups like the Catalyst Project, which is a group of, very active and authentic accomplices, not just allies, who are helping to train non-Black people to understand, and white people in particular, to understand how anti-Blackness works to hurt all of us, and how we can deconstruct whiteness. We have showing up for racial justice right here. We've got one in San Francisco. We've got another chapter here in Oakland, and they're a national organization. So you could be connecting to Surge Oakland and have a conversation with some members in New York. So I love that this, once again, is about non-Black people, primarily white people, coming together to start working on some of these issues that have been longstanding, that obviously not Black people can't solve. There's some things it's not for us to do that work. And so I appreciate that they understand that that is their work. There's also another group specifically for the LGBTQIA plus community and allies, and it's called the White Accountability Group. So I love that there are all of these groups to help folks. Who knows? We just had Wall of Moms show up. Maybe we'll have Wall of White Moms, and white mothers will get together and start having a conversation about how to deconstruct whiteness. Having people to guide that process isn't as difficult as most people think. We have access to amazing thought leaders who are already doing this work around how to deconstruct whiteness and how to identify anti-Blackness and root it out, how to redistribute wealth and funds, how to look at inequities differently. People need to go to the BLM website. A lot of people say a lot about BLM without understanding that BLM actually has trainings for you. There are workshops, there are opportunities to go through a rite of passage. So it's really about just stepping into the work, wanting to be an initiate and step into this more evolved, healthier you.
Yeah, and I think good points to mention that this is something that people have to decide for themselves internally to participate in their community authentically, as opposed to just performatively. But and also what I think is important to mention is that now I feel like a lot of these organizations, since the pandemic happened, are going online. So it's like,
yeah.
you don't have these local organizations in your community, now you could find them on IG. They're doing live stuff. They're doing, Zoom calls and trainings and workshops. So I just wanted to mention, shout out again to the Catalyst Project
Yes.
work. So please check them out. Yeah, and kind of around this notion of this deep introspective work that folks need to do as an important and necessary allyship rite of passage. I want to borrow the words of Rachel Cargle. She said that anti-racism work is not self-improvement work for white people. It does not end when white people feel better about what they've done. It ends when Black people are staying alive.
That's right.
Liberation, excuse me.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So what does it take to make that happen, though?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, what does it take to shift the paradigm? And when you look at what's happening now with the pandemic, it's interesting that we've chosen to use the words of the pandemic to describe this long-standing 450-year plus pandemic of anti-Blackness, right? And the pandemic has lessons for us within it. Now we're starting to talk about accessibility in ways that, the disabled community has been asking for a long time. Now we're looking at how people who are neurodiverse and really didn't excel in an environment, in a work environment, in an office with a lot of, whatever social demands there were, asking for the opportunity to work remotely. Mm-hmm. Now it's, it's something that people are wondering, why didn't we do this before? Even people for whom they thought that it wouldn't be beneficial are starting to understand how this paradigm shift, and it's a global paradigm shift, offers just so many gifts. So this is the time, if you're interested in introspection and access to tools to become a healthier version of yourself, to look at what paradigm shift actually means for you. I've been referring people back to the Harvard implicit bias assessment. A lot of folks don't know where to begin. They're like, hey, I took yoga yesterday. I meditated for 15 minutes. I'm good and ready for this work. It's like, and it's really important for us to start looking at the ways in which we've psyched ourselves into believing certain things that are actually harmful to others. Little subtle things, like even the word Black. We use the word Black and dark constantly to describe the most negative, the most vile, the most insidious things. And so imagine what someone like me, who also describes himself as dark and Black, experiences every time I hear it, especially associated with Trump. Trump is leading, the dark forces. No, he's not. I'm the dark force, honey.
Yes.
So let's look at the subtle ways also that we can reprogram ourselves for this new normal that benefits all of us. Someone asked, sure, if I pay attention to how often the word Black is used negatively, the word dark is used negatively, and I strip it out of my vocabulary, how will that really assist us? Well, it's already begun. So words like blackball are no longer used by Google. There are other terms that we understand are connected to the human trafficking and enslavement of millions of Africans that we have now started to say we can't bring to this new normal. My friend Elroy reminded me of the phrase, "The revolution will not be televised." And Elroy said, "No, it's being televised." So Elroy switched it up and said, "The revolution will not be toxic." We get to choose, and so even our revolutions, we have to ask ourselves, are we applying strategies that have come from a patriarchal mindset? Can we start looking at the ways that the matriarchy protest? Can we start looking at other forms of energy and shifting that into the new normal. But definitely the Harvard implicit bias assessment helps people to look at the subtle ways and maybe the not so subtle ways that you might be an ageist or a classist. You know, there are lots of different stances of privilege that we've been told in this society that we deserve. And this helps to break that down.
Yeah. So yes, the Harvard implicit bias. Please look that up. One thing that, well, first before I forget, I do have to say our legal ID is you're listening to KXSF 102.5 FM LP Real Community Radio, San Francisco, California. This is Nick Musney here with Kin Folkz of the Queer Spectrum Queer Media, just lifelong activists and artists here with us, just bringing so much wisdom to the table. I do want to talk about, expand on a little bit more of this. You know, you kind of touched upon this already, but I feel like oftentimes people separate, you know, the personal versus the political, and the internal versus like our external. And it seems like what you hit on is that, you know, really the work begins inside. It's, you know, us, you know, I hear this language often of, you know, killing or defunding the cop inside of our head, you know, unlearning the colonizer in our mind, or, you know, whatever language and whatever system that you need to kind of pack and dismantle inside your head has to be done first, or in conjunction with the work you do within your community, in order for, you know, authentic allyship or advocacy or social justice work. So yeah, I just want to thank you for kind of bringing that to light. Now,
and the work benefits all of us.
Yes.
Like, that's a really important thing for people to understand. It's proven. We have historical knowledge. We have people who have lived through various movements who will tell you that if you are working on behalf of the most marginalized among us, then all of us will benefit from it. All of us, even the people who are the oppressors, who don't understand that they're carrying a lot of karmic weight, and it's not something that meets them after their demise. Karmic weight is something that you carry with you every day. When your brain or your heart or your spirit's telling you that something is just off, you know, like people who feel know that when they harm someone, that it sits somewhere. So even if at the very least what we do is we build a strong community of empaths to set an example for people who are still trying to grow in their emotional intelligence, that alone is a beautiful thing for us to build.
Yes. You know, kind of, you know, been kind of staying on, you know, this is the path of, you know, doing this real kind of deep work, introspective work. You know, on the other side, or the flip side of that, there's, you mentioned this phrase, and this is the first time I heard it was from you, is Black trauma porn. And so could you explain Black trauma porn, and how have, as you said, many built businesses off of Black pain? And could you tell us a little bit about that?
It's the dynamic of power, right? Like, we know that trigger content warning, I'm going to use some terminology that might be distressing for some. So I just wanted to put that out there. We know that rape is about power, right? And in the same way, when you start looking at Black trauma in the context of the people who are acted upon, if you're constantly taking the stance of the voyeur, or the person who is investing in that dynamic repeatedly, then you are doing little more than using it as an outlet for your whether people know it or not, using it as an outlet for some of their emotional disjoint. So rather than helping a group of Black people in your own neighborhood who are struggling for shelter, that on the surface, being able to look at that as a dastardly position to be in, would be you'd expect someone would be able to do very simply. Oftentimes it's easier for people to look 3 communities over and feel something for the people who are distanced from this tragedy that's unfolding right in front of them. A lot of that is about the dynamic of power, because you're judging yourself when the person is immediate. But when it's distant, you know, it's like engaging in online pornography. You can talk about, oh, how terrible it is that, you know, these tragic things are happening without actually acknowledging that you are a part of the tragedy and that you can make a difference by, instead of constantly dwelling on who was taken, also spend some time taking that energy and focusing on the people who are still here. So some folks approached me recently to ask me if I would create a mural. And they wanted a beautiful BLM mural. And they said, oh, and we can put the names of all of your dead alongside the mural.
Yeah.
And, you know, I thought, I got to step back. That's a large part of this experience is about stepping back. And when I stepped back, I was able to just shift the dynamic and ask, how much do you know about the energy, the conditions that created the deaths that you're talking about? What role have you played in terms of a positive impact so that these deaths don't continue? Why don't we start with that before you start thinking about which names you're going to put on your wall?
Yes.
You know, because that actually will do so much more for us than yet another mural. And BLM has actually started to speak up around the nation. Thank goodness, you know, we have these outpourings of artistic expressions. We love where it started. Now it's too much. It's too much. It's lost its impact. And people are starting to get excited about the idea of having it emblazoned on their body or on their walls or in their homes. And, you know, it's not that much different than having a picture of something that titillates, you know, sort of hanging on your wall without understanding the background beyond what's hanging on your wall. So we've asked people to stop creating the BLM murals. For right now, if you're going to create a BLM mural, you should be a member of BLM. You should be an active member. You should be engaging in, you know, some of our initiatives like defunding the police, like investing in the communities that are most marginalized. If you're doing that work, you probably don't have time to create a BLM mural, honestly. You just... Hey, Salinas, California. Woo! Oh, that's so sweet. Yeah, that's a great. Okay, so I'm from the Central Valley, and I'm just, yeah. So I mean, originally I'm not, but I'm saying that I live there as well. And I'm finding that the more time that we spend looking at images of Black people being oppressed, the less aware we are of how obscene some of that is. For example, taking a knee, kneeling. Now, it was different when Kep was doing it.
Yeah.
You know, we understood because just like our murals, there was a whole 10-point plan associated with it. It was coming from a lived-in experience. Now what we're seeing is whole groups of people taking a knee and doing it in the name of Brother George Floyd. Now, I ask people to think about how that feels to a member of his family who had to witness that is actually the way that he was killed. Right? The fact that people don't draw the two together means that people are so much more engaged in the performative nature that they're not actually thinking about the people. They're not being sensitive. So that's just one example of the porn quality, that it's exciting to get down on that knee. The performance of a group of athletes all taking the knee could be deeply troubling to some folks who have experienced having a knee on their throat. You know?
Yeah.
So I would much rather that people not engage in the posture and engage instead in the practice. You know, take the time, go to your city hall, find out what is being done in terms of defunding your local police station, your local police department, rather. What conversations are being had? Do you even know what percentage of your budget is going to your police departments? And have you done the research on the difference between proactive prevention and reactive violence when it comes to crime? And if you haven't, please take the time to do that work. A lot of people think defunding means that crime will run amok. In Oakland, where some of our criminals have been police officers, that's always an entertaining, question. Folks should really focus on looking at really great programs that are already in action in this country, where they have reduced the amount that's been given to what should be officers of the peace, but oftentimes become referees of violence and participants. Not all the time, but far too often.
Yeah.
We need to look at how we can take some of that funding. Like in Oakland, it was 44% of our city budget.
Yep.
That means housing, any initiatives that would protect us in terms of education, all of the things that we know we need, health programs. It's directly sucking the life energy out of the things that would deter crime. Building community deters crime. Giving people the opportunity to take some sort of pleasure, good pleasure, positive pleasure in being a part of an interdependent community is something that we could be doing with the money. Right now, everyone wants to grow something. Great. We need more community gardens. You need funding for that. We need to think of other ways to take care of grassroots organizations that are providing food for people. We've got the money. We just have to shift it. It's just a pivot.
Yeah. And, what you mentioned about, Black trauma, Black pain being so sensational, something easily reshareable and that captures the eye and makes some feel good about sharing this, because it's like, okay, we're bringing light to this trauma, but exactly what are we doing about it is the next question, right? That I feel like, as you're saying, so many people, fail or don't know to ask themselves, and the actual work, doing the research and what is the police budget. These are dense documents, and it takes, especially in smaller towns like Salinas is where I'm from, and we have lots of folks joining out there. It's like, we kind of there's that danger of Black trauma porn and saying like, okay, this is not Ferguson, this is not Minneapolis, and this doesn't happen here. But if you look and pay attention, it's happening in our own community, in every community. So I really like what you said about, the work is actually not as sensational as the symptoms, and I like to use this kind of dichotomy, I guess, between treating a symptom versus treating the system.
Right.
And I think it's a lot of what we do is we're responding, like you said, but not being proactive. So so I love kind of everything you're saying about how do we keep the fascination with, or kind of stop ourselves from being overly fascinated with the symptoms, and really work towards the system of and what is, I guess, in your mind, you talked a little bit about investing in these community services and community gardens and other support systems for our community. What do you could you tell us a little bit more about your vision for what does healthy progress look like for marginalized communities? And also a little bit about, you mentioned this before, what we call the nonprofit industrial complex, or what you've called it, could delay that healthy progress.
Beautiful. Thank you. And may I borrow that from you, the symptom? And because, you know, we're in the age of the pandemics, right? And so much of the language is being seen through that lens of pathology from a medical perspective. So the symptom, definitely. Just before I answer that question, I did want to share something because it popped into my head. It's the difference between reposting Brianna's, you know, image over and over again versus reposting the images of her killers, of the people who sat and watched her bleed out for 6 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, like having some clarity around how we should redirect our energy to, you know, that these folks for so long have gotten away with murder is something that should be the focus. And we should be able to memorialize and also lift up the lives of people who have been taken by state violence, because we shouldn't be defined by that moment of somebody else's evil.
Yes.
You know, we've had all of these lives who, you know, when you look at them outside of the context of somebody else's abuse, truly were the type of people that you want to know, that you'd like to, I wish I was in that situation with them. They wanted more for not just themselves, but for others.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's an important part of what we should look at. And that means we really should get their killers. We should get the people who are responsible for taking them in a situation where there's some accountability. There should be some accountability. And that also means that we should question the system that produces people who feel that this is part of the practice.
Yeah.
We know that reform has not worked. We've seen multiple examples of that. So we have to look at systems, not just saying, we'll take this chunk out and we'll take this chunk out. Let's just look at whether policing actually ever worked for all of us in this country. So to your question more poignantly, which is, what is the new normal? The new normal is grassroots leadership. The new normal is communities coming together and starting to solve their problems and build their truths and their triumphs together. It's about people, even though we're all sheltered in place, continuing to have the more difficult dialogues. I find that in the nonprofit industrial complex, meaning the nonprofits that typically are led by people who either by class or by skin color privilege or by gender privilege are removed from a lot of the communities that they share in their funding documents as the community that they're focused on helping. We have to move away from that notion of the patriarch, of the kind patriarch. We have to move away from, you know, the godly, goodly person who comes in to help the disadvantaged, because that builds that performative aspect. We also need to eliminate the middle person. If we have someone who's in the performance of benefiting the community, then that's really just an obstacle to the kind of real conversations that need to happen between the people who want to shift funds to help community members or shift resources or shift access. We need that conversation to happen, minus someone standing in the middle as an obstacle. So there was, for example, another example, a large corporation was interested in making a donation to the Queer Healing Arts Center. And not all nonprofits are you know, out of control. It's really that the structure itself needs to be examined. We need to interrogate it and shift it so that there's more access for people in the communities. That's all I'm saying, really. But anyway, so there was a company that asked if they could make a contribution. They wanted to make a large contribution and they needed the 501c3 documentation. And this notion of having a pass right? Like this somehow verifies that we are worthy of having the resource, is something that I wanted to break up. So I said, instead, I would rather that you build a personal relationship with the work that we're doing. I would much rather, instead of getting a huge donation from the company, have 10 people who work at the company come and actually build a relationship with us. Get to know who we are. And I would love it if it's people who live either in the community or near the community, so that we have some kinship around some of the problems or struggles or issues that we're dealing with in community, so we can bridge that and you can see how you can be more supportive right here. And they said that no one had ever actually said that to them. No one had ever said, no, we won't take the goo gobs of money. We will instead ask that you come and build a relationship. That's what the new normal looks like. It's about building relationships that are healthy. It's about being aware of the power dynamic, this pyramid power dynamic, being a crushing dynamic and turning it into a sphere. And really thinking about how we all can be a part of this experience. So bottom up, redistribute wealth, redistribute access. Equity begins by having the difficult conversations. People need to stop thinking in terms of scarcity, who actually don't have scarcity. I thank the pandemic once again for the lessons learned. Not all of the lessons have been great. There have been some. Today I learned that the average American, I don't know, they didn't ask me, but the average American wants almost $1 million. In January, when asked, there was a poll and folks said that they needed almost $1 million to be comfortable. Since then, that's downgraded to, well, we'll take 650,000. Hopefully by December, people will become even more realistic and understand that comfort is not based upon your capital. It's based upon your community. It's based upon your community. That's where the comfort comes. So learning how to work together, to be interdependent, to provide for each other. Hopefully in the new normal, we'll be able to shift a lot of the bloat, a lot of this glut that's happening in terms of resources, and move it along and spread it out more evenly so that we all can experience loving, healthy realities.
Wow. Yeah, first of all, I just want to, commemorate you for, or, recognize that decision. And, I think it's so tempting to take money, but the fact that you ask for, the building of a relationship and community first, I think is a very powerful decision. Yeah, thank you for putting that first. I think, I'm reminded, an organization that I work with, Agents of Change 831. We're working with a group called Milpa and Salinas, who, supports incarcerated people both inside and a just transition back into society and our communities. That was one thing, we're working on similar things, and they're like, oh, could you do this, post this, or let's talk about, this next action and really let's make some moves. But then, they kind of slowed us down, and they're like, we want to meet with you and build with you, and we don't want we wanted this to be relationship based, not transactional based. And I think even, our labor could be transactional, and not just monetary, so, and the work that we do and how we support each other. So I thank you for that reminder of, of our interdependence in kind of moving forward healthily as a community. I do want to respect your time. I think I originally said that we were going to go about 45 minutes. We're a little bit past that now. I do want to,
There was a great question though. Someone asked, did they agree to, yes, they want to build relationships. Yeah. And they also are looking at the way that they fund differently now. So there's instead of looking at these applications, they're actually going to start coming into the community and seeing the work being done and participate in the work, because that's the way that the resource actually becomes authentic. Otherwise, it becomes this strange dynamic of people coming in to make you stronger based upon what makes sense to them.
Yeah.